pricing? Where is the tipping point? Based on what I'm seeing, it doesn't look like there's any part of the home building industry that is being untouched.
No. It's all being groped.
What do you see in terms of labor costs right now?
Honestly, I'd say labor itself hasn't moved.
They just get fired if they try to
be like, I mean, you think about it, when it comes to installing whatever's on the job, I mean, it gets there late, you pay more for it, but it's the same thing that gets there. It's not, there's nothing that's making it harder to install or takes longer or whatever. So there's an argument to say, no, I'm not raising prices on labor right now because nothing's changed.
The only thing that I've seen out there is that demand being where it is, the builders there's a lot more builders trying to start houses.
Yeah, I see that.
Then again, there's materials to it.
I see that too.
So what do?
Finish the inside. Like, I know the builder built next to us that really brick at all. They got it for their model, but they have all of these homes that are being painted. You know, they're moving on the inside, but there's stones out there. Actually, stone's been real easy to get. Brick is not been. It's funny because stone is made, you know, so it's that process, and they're just so far behind making it.
Yep. Generators again started with the freeze, the snowpocalypse, and it's never let up.
That's not going to go anywhere for a while.
Appliances. I talked to a couple of generator super stores today, and they're saying that 4 to 6 months for delivery.
Well, fortunately, it won't be cold. We might get some hurricanes, but
yeah, that's the thing.
Sorry, Mr. Customer, you'll have to go through one more summer of doing it old school.
That's right.
Which I'm sure you can tolerate.
Steaming.
That's a hurricane.
You having fun?
I guess so. Been a long week already.
Yeah. Wednesday. Did you talk to Ron?
Last week I did. Just asked him what questions I can't know the answers to.
I'll see maybe be ready. I'll see maybe
I went down there today. So the topo's on the new topo's on the draft board, but they have to send it to us for approval, and then once we approve it, and then we'll put it on the site plan. So that's like probably a week.
bureaucratic. Yes.
Welcome to the Buildology Podcast.
I'm Perry.
I'm Randy.
I'm Mac.
I'm Justin.
We're going to
Help you.
Become
A buildologist.
Perry, Randy, Mac, and Justin have a combined 100 plus years of experience in the building and real estate industry. And now they bestow that experience to you to help you become buildologists. This is the Buildology Podcast. We've got building down to a science.
Okay, everybody.
Greetings, everybody.
Hopefully we are live here with our sound. We had a little bit of a sound problem. Did a few changes with our sound setup here, and you might also notice that there's three of us today. Perry couldn't make it; he's out
making money,
trying to make a living. Yep. So, hey Perry, if you're tuned in,
Perry sends his love.
Yeah.
He's out doing the day job today.
That's right.
All right, Mac, I'm going to have you scoot up a little bit just so we're all, we have to get readjusted. We're missing someone, so new camera setup here. So what episode are we on, Randy?
I think this is episode number 10.
10, the magic 10.
10 it is.
We're almost teenagers.
Yep.
Double digits.
Yep.
Yes, double digits.
Double digits.
Time flies.
Got to
when
write
you're
two
having
numbers
fun.
now, side by side.
Yep.
And so I think we discussed our topic for today and kind of expanding on some in show. We've kind of mentioned stuff in shows before, but I think it's time to dedicate kind of a whole show to what's going out there in the pricing world.
You know, when it's made the mainstream media and the nightly news, it's time to start talking a little bit more about
new stories coming out about the cost of, and they were highlighting lumber in those particular stories, but just the rising cost of general. And we were kind of having an internal discussion before, is like, at what point, I mean, when does there become a tipping point to that? Prices versus demand versus interest rates versus all of that.
Right.
Yeah, because you were kind of looking at some charts before the show started to kind of get some current prices, because what we look at in this industry is it's a commodity, so it's traded daily. So prices change daily. People don't understand that, all the way up until about sheetrock, this is a commodity business.
It's true.
Bought and traded daily.
It's pretty bad when you look at that chart and it's gone off the top of the page and they're now a red line going up the side of the wall.
Yeah, it seems like every time I look at those, the first sentence in the summary it ends with, for the first time ever, it's reached this pricing category.
Never good news.
All-time high.
All-time highs.
Yeah.
Records broken.
I've heard the word unprecedented so many times just in the last 2 months. So
well, you know me.
it's unprecedented, actually.
It's unprecedented.
Yeah, when you talk about increases that are in the hundreds of percent, it's a small period of time. Yeah, you're talking about something that is just it's like you're just grabbing on and along for the ride, basically.
Yeah. And Justin's question is a great question, great topic. Is where is the tipping point? What's going to cause us to get to that point?
Yeah. So the tipping point of this market, I think, being in the market, we get asked all the time, well, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? And honestly, if someone actually tells you what they know, then run, because this really is testing things at multiple angles. Like, we've been in this industry and we've seen material prices go up. We've had shortages of things,
right,
and we've dealt with it all from different points. But when they say record and all-time highs, it's such a complex issue, because there's so many things, and I think what we should probably try to do is like break down what's causing it.
What are the factors involved? Because I've told people the last 2 months, this is not a drill. I mean, this is not just a little cyclical, blip on the screen. This is the real deal.
Yeah,
and it's unprecedented.
It's unprecedented, and as long as you're spelling that, I'm good with it.
That's a capital U,
It's
unprecedented.
Yeah.
It's in the spaghetti.
Yeah.
Well,
How do you
obviously,
spell
the big elephant in the room is lumber, sheet goods,
Yeah.
plywood, things like that. Because
Yeah.
lumber, obviously, the main component when you're framing residential, you're using wood, walls, ceilings, roofs. But lumber goes into so much of the other items that we
Yeah.
buy too, and it affects everything. So once that's skyrocketed out of control and whether if you ever really had control over any of that, no.
Yeah.
But when it gets so high, it starts affecting everything.
And
Well,
you were-
there's so many different points to that too. It's there, is it at the raw material stage? Is it out in the forest where the prime yellow pine trees are? Is it in the chemicals? Where are the shortages? Where's the roadblock?
Yeah, I saw one of the causes of the shortage. Obviously one of the shortages is just not people in the plant processing the raw material.
Right.
But that's not the only thing. I saw that over the last 4 years that we'd actually cut off supply from Canada. So it's not just that there aren't as many people in the factory processing.
Right.
We cut off where we were getting it. And so,
But I think we have to be clear, though, with the fact that there is plenty of raw material here in the United States that's
Yeah.
not being utilized
right.
because they can't manufacture the lumber at the mills fast enough.
And we're in this weird situation. We kind of asked ourselves before this, can we envision the point where it catches up? And I think we can, but that's not anytime soon. So let's say people come back into the plants tomorrow, right? And everyone's back at the plant working tomorrow. Well, you're so far behind. I saw that it's down to a 30-day supply of inventory. That's unbelievable. 30-day supply. No one's ever really seen that in the United States. So that has ramifications that stack on top of ramifications is what we were talking about.
Yeah.
That let's say you want to sell your house right now to take advantage and cash in and say, okay, I'm going to sell at a high market, so capture that now. And what we were saying is this isn't like the stock market where you cash out and you put your money in the bank. Well, you cash out in this market where you have to live somewhere.
Everybody's got to have someplace to live.
You got to go somewhere. So now you're going to cash out at the top, but you would also buy at the top. So that doesn't make sense for a lot of people.
It's a lateral move in most cases.
In most cases.
Yeah.
So those people that were thought about selling and didn't want to just make that lateral move. So they decide not to enter the market with their house. Well, there's some supply. Well, if builders aren't supplying and there's not enough supply coming from the natural resale market, that's just going to force prices higher.
Yeah. It's driving everything. Rentals are getting harder and harder to find out there, whether it's an apartment or a single family or whatever. Even RV spaces are in very short supply.
Wow.
People are looking for places to live, period, no matter what.
Yeah, you mentioned rentals. So as prices go up, and we were kind of mentioning, let's say your average American family, your salary didn't go up last year, but the prices of housing, let's say a $200,000 house is now $300,000.
Well, it's more than that.
Right?
Yeah.
So the only choice for you is to buy less of a house or move into the rental market.
Yeah.
And so now you've got a lot of different factors going. It's not just that you want to buy a house. The house that you can buy isn't the same house that you could buy a year
That's
ago.
right. Everything starts ratcheting downward.
Right.
How much home you can actually buy with your dollar.
Right. So it actually takes people out of the market, which helps on the supply side, but there's just not enough inventory to satisfy it. So the curing of this is kind of a long way. It's not measured by months, I don't think.
And just what I'm witnessing out there right now, I'm not seeing any slowdown. If anything, I'm seeing it's heating up even further.
Right. And we also talked about the cure of, what are the cures to this would be raising interest rates. And we said that, and Mac had a pretty good point on that. was, you raise it a little bit, it makes it worse.
It actually does. I mean, we've seen this time and time again, and when you have some rates that are, moving around a little bit in different directions, but generally if rates have been fairly stable and been fairly low for a long period of time, all it takes is that one little hiccup, that one little jump, that upward tick, and it spurs on a huge buying trend.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a point where it slows things down, and there's a point where it'll almost bring it to a stop. But you're right; it'll actually increase the demand out there. Yeah.
So it's also where it stops. Who knows what makes it stop? Raising interest rates would probably cause more chaos than anything, and we know eventually that's what does follow when prices get too high. As a builder, you could stop. I mean, how do you stop when you still have people knocking on the front door wanting to buy now,
right,
and they're doing it? I mean, they're still buying now. Do you say, man, it's like, okay, or do you build a product, finish it, and price it that like we talked about last time?
Yeah.
Price it at the time everything is when you finish it versus pricing it up front when you bought it, knowing that 4 months later, lumber is going to be up another 15%.
Yeah.
And you're not competing. And then all of a sudden you feel like you're selling it too low because you're not pricing it at today's market.
Because those guys, those bigger guys, they have shareholders, so they have to meet, numbers and
right.
All that. So there's always pressure to keep going, and the pressure of the unknown. I mean, we're talking about prices changing daily, right? And to get a house on the ground, I mean, it takes 3-4 months that they sit, in a production builder, on that starts report as they're coming down the pipeline.
Right.
And the whole time they're coming down that pipeline, the price is going up, and they haven't even started yet.
Well, it's like, then you start thinking about, okay, and you pinpoint, you start looking at your local issue going on like right now. So as we were sitting here talking, I'm thinking, if your takeoffs aren't right, let's say you're building a production environment and you're blowing and going, and the first 2 buildings come out and your lumber's not right. And the worst problem you could have is you got too much left over because you've already bought that. So, but you have to move that job forward. So do you toss it? So I'm like, if the concrete guy comes to you and says, hey, in May, I'm raising prices because it's costing me too much to buy form lumber,
right,
which is what's happening now.
That's great.
Do I call him and go, I've got a stack of 2x-dimensional that I didn't use. You can come pick this up if you stave me off an increase for a month. So you start thinking about
alternatives,
deals and things like that, what you can do to stave off that and just be a little bit of a step ahead of somebody else.
Yeah.
But if you're a big box builder, I mean, you've got a little bit more control of your situation than what we're seeing on the build on your lot side. People that are, in recent months, last 6 to 12 months, they've gone out and they've bought property out in the country, bought some acreage, and, they're wanting to get locked in.
Yeah.
And it's impossible for any build on your lot builder right now. We can't even get a quote from our suppliers.
Yeah. To guarantee it. Yeah.
No, you can't.
You
That's gone out the window. It used to be 45 to 60 days.
Yeah.
That's all gone out the window. So it's really created a lot of chaos in the industry.
Yeah. And like I said, there's got to be a tipping point at some point when things hit a max and start leveling back out. And then I don't think those prices that we saw a year ago, we'll never see those again.
Not for a while.
Those are gone.
It would take a bubble bust before that happened again.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that what we're looking at right now is going to be the new normal, and I'm starting to see people adjust to that. We had some massive price increases, 3 in a row that came in, January, February, March, and we're dealing with that, heartburn right now. But it hasn't slowed things down.
Yeah, that's the other thing we were talking about is that the market can absorb it because interest rates are so low.
That's the key.
The interest rates are so low, so the increased price isn't really affecting their pocketbook the same as what 7 or 8% or 9% interest rates.
And the interesting thing that we're seeing out there right now, too, on the appraisal side of it, from the lender standpoint, is that we've got a lot of people coming in to Texas. We're talking specifically about our market right now, but tons of people coming in that have cashed out from the East and West Coast. and they're coming in with handfuls, bundles of cash, and that's where you see these bidding wars going on the resale side.
Yeah.
And that's actually helping appraisals because they're cashing, they're closing, and it's rising tide floating all boats.
Right.
So it's really some interesting dynamics going on out there right now.
Well, it's like if you have a resale home and you're even considering, hey, we're thinking about selling, and if you just happen to mention that to someone, you've got everybody hitting you up going, hey, let's work a deal now, but don't put it on the market. Let's work a deal now. Let's do that.
Yeah.
When people find out you're thinking about selling, and your neighborhoods find out about it, they literally are knocking on your door.
What is that known as when that happens?
Off market, Mac. Yes, that's one form of off market. That's for sure.
Yeah. I just hadn't heard that term.
I guess it's one way to test the value of your home. Just mention it and go, well, let's see how high we can go. You don't have to sell it.
Yeah, what's that?
You just gotta know where the market is.
Thing. I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah, off market listings, the hard way.
But we're just having all these people come in from other states, and they come to Texas, and if you've lived here all your life, yes, we're getting sticker shock right now. But when you're coming in from other parts of the country, this still looks like a bargain. Does it not?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's an East Coast, West Coast, anywhere.
Matter.
You could come from Virginia, and this is still one of the least expensive places to live in America.
The housing promised land.
Right. So we have an influx of population into Texas, and so all these people coming in, these are still ridiculously low prices, so they don't have a problem paying a higher price. It's the local Texans that are really going, wait a minute, guys, this is like ridiculously high. Well, not for the rest of the United States. That's what they pay.
It's that old saying, perception is reality.
Right.
And that's a prime example.
Right. And so for us, driving the price up to kind of what the rest of America is paying, it's painful here, but it's just what they're used to paying, and it's still inexpensive to them. Because you're moving from California, this is dirt cheap.
Right.
Dirt cheap.
Well, even it's same price, same size, same everything, compared to other places in the country, even if it's the exact same product at the same price, it's still more economical for here because everything, the atmosphere that Texas has created to live here. I mean, just basic, cost of living is lower.
But
on
lumber
all aspects.
But lumber, copper, all those things that we're talking about, it's a problem everywhere. And so as we're having price increases, everywhere's having price increases.
True.
So everything's going up. So it's going up
it's not
here.
Localized,
it's not localized, right? So it's not just like we're catching up. No, everything is getting unattainable to everyone.
Right.
Yes.
And we're still cheaper.
And
so that causes like a rush right here. So
Hey, and all of that, and yet I'm still getting 10 new starts next week. Because guess what? Everything I'm building is sold.
Yeah.
So what do you do as a builder?
You
keep
start
moving
it.
on.
You keep moving on.
You buy high product and you move on.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, because for several months now, we've been calling this, and I think we can now truthfully say this is probably the greatest housing boom in U.S. history.
Yeah, easy.
Sure. Possibly
easy.
in the history of the planet. And it's now, I've heard more and more people referring to it as the home building crisis, the housing crisis, because what people, the average layperson, the homeowner, or the average consumer out there doesn't realize is that this type of housing boom does have a dark side to it.
Yeah.
And when you have shortages of materials, high demand, it's the little guys in the industry, it's the little vendors, the little suppliers. If they're not big enough to be able to buy material and stockpile it, well, guess what? They're out of business.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing a lot of that kind of crazy stuff happening.
And even I even see though when it slows. So let's say we return to some normality in 6 to 12 months. That let's say we hit a high, and then there's some market factors that come in and start slowing and trying to correct it. When I hear people say bubble means that it's going to pop, right? And they think that it's going to pop. The backside of this isn't a sharp decline in price because of what inflation's done.
Yeah.
And so what it means is just there's not as many moving at this higher price. I don't see the price coming down because our dollar doesn't buy. It's going to unveil inflation is what it's going to do. It's like It's going to say, oh, here it is. Here's the consequence of, a couple $1 trillion injected into our economy. And guess what? Your dollar doesn't buy as much anymore. It'll just slow down the pace of things happening, but the price isn't going to go down because our dollar doesn't buy as much.
I'm going to mark my calendar because I think we need it 1 year from now, 12 months from this podcast. We need to come back and revisit that. And I think when we look back, we're going to see this was the beginning of the new normal.
Right.
And
that would be podcast 62 if we did one a week.
Man, your math
wow,
is so
look at
good.
that. Perry's not even here. We got a math guy.
skills.
Look at the math skills.
Just
He
sitting
left the
next
math
to him.
void.
Just sitting next to him.
Podcast 62. Look at the Nostradamus over here.
I just took 52 and added 10. It was pretty simple.
Nostradamus over
It's pretty
here.
impressive.
Right.
Though.
That was pretty impressive. So a year from now, that's our pledge,
I
right?
think
To
we
look
need
back.
to come back and
I'm a little scared that the $240,000 starter home that's $340,000 is $440,000,
Yeah.
Okay,
right?
well, guys,
It's a possibility.
This brings up a really, really interesting question. Then, they always say that there's always opportunity in a down market. There's all kinds of ways to find opportunity. In this market that we're looking at today, again, we know that there is a major shortage on rental properties.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So if you're an investor sitting out there and you've got some cash sitting on the sidelines, you're looking for opportunities to meet this demand of rentals. People looking for places.
Yeah.
They've already
Anytime
sold their house.
affordability leaves a market,
Yeah.
that's ripe for a rental investment, right? And so you're going to have a shortage of housing. Well, if they can't find it to buy, the naturally is go to rent.
Right.
So it's just hand in hand. It's just going to be there. And so what we're seeing is building new construction rental property into the future. It has to be
Makes
a thing.
sense, yeah.
It just has to be a thing that is in high demand, because as that $400,000 starter home, that sounds comical to say right now, but in a year from now, that might be what we're talking about is,
Right.
Starter homes in the $300,000 to $400,000 range that would just be unfathomable.
Right.
Now, look at that, spell that one.
Unfathomable.
I looked at him.
He looked at you.
I looked at you. Max the one that corrects me all the time on the spelling. So
I'm the journalism guy.
yeah.
Okay.
So, but I every time I get in trouble with the spelling, I ask someone to spell spaghetti. So it's
SP.
I'm like, that'll get them
Every time.
every time.
Mississippi.
But yeah, exactly. So we look at that starter home price, and as the starter home price goes up, and the base salary doesn't chase it, right? That's just the formula for rentals.
True.
Right. So it's pretty easy to follow that.
Hence the reason there's a huge demand for new construction rental properties.
Right.
From
Exactly.
investors. Right
From
now.
investors, right? And if you look at, the last time we got into this kind of cracks me up. Everyone says, oh, the bubble of 2008, 2009. That's when the average public figured out what was going on. It started in 2006. It
did.
It took 2 years to get to that point right there where everyone turned around and goes, hey, man, this housing market's really bad. Yeah, it took 2 years to get here, right?
I was in Florida in 2006. We saw it already.
Yeah, so when it goes bad, it doesn't just happen like this. Now, there's a bad period of time that people recognize that, oh, this is really, really bad. Kind of like this right now. This is the front side of it going up.
Yep.
So there's going to be a front side for a long time. And then there's going to be a part where it caps out. And then there's going to be a backside. And that backside is not going to happen in 3 months or 6 months or anything like that. It's going to be a year, 2 years. It's long
We
and
don't
drawn
know.
out. We don't
Yeah.
know. And so
Yeah.
where does that flatten out, that curve? We just don't know.
Yeah. One thing I have been seeing out there, though, is I'm seeing people that originally had budgeted for, and I'm talking about 8 months ago, that had budgeted for, let's say, a 5,000 square foot home. Now they're dropping back to 4,500, 4,200.
Right.
Same thing. If somebody was thinking about building a 3,500, they're dropping back. So the entire range of what we're seeing demand for is falling with rising prices.
Yeah, and so what that'll translate, and we've seen this a number of times too, is that, as prices go up, so what happens, it forces density, so the lot gets carved up, it's smaller.
Correct.
Those days of 80-foot wide, production lots and stuff, hard to find, right?
Right.
And then, 50s and then the 40s and the 40-foot wide product, that comes in, it's just going to force more and more density. I think you'll see more duplexes, more, fourplexes and quadplexes and stuff like that. You're just going to see more of that because the land's going to be so much more expensive, the building materials, all that. The only way to solve that is with smaller density, right? Getting more
It's
people.
interesting how this cycle, in one way, shape, or form, it repeats itself.
Yeah.
This is a repeating cycle. Now, the factors that contribute to it do change from time to time. We had the thing we don't speak of was a big part of that, along with a whole bunch of other things.
Right.
But the cycle, it's a repeating cycle.
Yeah.
It's a bubble bust kind of deal. It has been since production building's been in inception.
Right.
Maybe some lessons were learned last time, but I used to always say, as builders, we have very short memories. You forget about the bad times when times are really, really good. You
Kinda
forget
like
about what it
bankers.
was like. Yeah, they just have
Just like
short
bankers.
memories.
The times before
And you start making the same mistakes over.
Yeah, the times before when there was good markets, I would say builders got to enjoy the good market. Like, this is a weird thing that I think it's bad on both sides, right? It's bad on the front side of this as the price is going up, and it'll be bad on the back side when it's going down. I don't see a great side, being in new construction in this environment. It's hard to make money and stay alive. Like, people aren't thinking about, what my margin is. No, they're thinking about staying
Survival.
in business.
Yeah, just being able to pay my bills and do the next one.
Right. So who's ever heard of that though on an increasing market side? Like,
that's what I mean.
trying to stay in business
strange.
on a increasing
On a high demand, can't build it fast enough, trying to stay in business. Yeah, that just sounds strange.
That just sounds strange,
boom
right?
Turns into a crisis
Right.
for a lot of people that are touching this industry.
Right.
I mean, really, it's all going to start when people start saying no to no, I can't do that right now. I can't buy that right now. I'm going to sit where I'm at, and
Right.
who knows where that is.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing some of that happening out there right now. People saying, hey, I'm going to take a comfortable seat on the sidelines and see what happens. But again, it's that risk, You don't know what's going to happen. If you've got a home to sell, you run the risk of, the market cooling. But and people are saying, hey, lumber's bound to come down. But as Justin mentioned, the vendors, the suppliers don't ever give it up once they get it.
That's true.
I mean, it's just, that's been our experience forever.
Yeah. Like there's always let's say prices 50%, go up 50%, do they return and discount 20% back to you? Probably.
Maybe, yeah. That's I could see that happening.
I can see that happening.
And we have seen that happen.
Yeah.
But
there, that 30%'s there,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's there. It's like, okay, because the way our industry works is they ate so many price increases along, it's like kind of eating an elephant. It's little bitty bites, right? And so they don't come and hit you with every little price increase that they're getting. And then when this does happen, it's like, well, wait a minute, I'm just getting back to normal, right? And so you eat that price increase that really should have came for a number of years.
I had a vendor the other day said that this past year it's being like nibbled to death by a duck. Nibbled to death by a duck.
So we know a lot about
That's my
ducks around here
contribution
too.
for the day.
Yeah.
So
We know a lot about ducks around here.
that's right.
Sometimes you get an email or a message about a price increase, and it feels like getting hit inside of the head with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because sometimes
Mhm.
copper is one that is.
that's crazy,
we were
isn't
looking
it?
before
Yeah.
500% increase in 4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And that's a twofold issue for us, because one is we start getting surcharges for our wiring, and two, that becomes our wiring much
Right.
more attractive to
Yeah.
people that want it. So
Right.
you start to have to worry about that again.
Theft and all that
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
so
And,
valuable.
AC copper and
Yeah.
all of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good
You
point.
see the
'cause-
guys that are posing, they somehow came across an old electric company workman shirt and they're wearing
Yeah,
out there.
exactly.
So I'm out just checking the wiring.
Yeah, just
Just
checking on your wiring.
checking.
That's all bad. I
Sorry,
need to
that's
pull
not
it
the
from your
company I've been
house.
using. Sorry.
Making sure you have my wiring.
Yeah.
I'll be back later tonight to pick it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
Yeah.
leave everything here and open it. Fine. It's crazy.
Some,
Now, this really, I mean, we're all laughing right now, but this really isn't a laughing matter
Yeah.
for a lot of people right now.
yeah, the interest rate, I think that's one to keep your eye on to see as an indicator. And I really don't, I mean, when you're talking about 3% interest rates, like who's ever heard of 3%? Like that's ridiculous, right? But who's ever heard of 4%? If you would have said 4%, 10 years ago, that would have been like, oh wow, yeah, that's a great
It's a
loan.
great
right?
interest rate. Yeah.
5% would have been great. So even moving it all the way up to 5.25, those are still great interest rates. It's not going to
very
curb
true.
it to the point where if there is supply can't catch up.
But you have to also ask yourself, how long have these rates been at this level?
Yeah.
How long has it been? Do you know? 12,
Yeah.
13 years, 14
Yeah.
years, something like that. So there's a whole generation now
That's what
of
they
home buyers
experience.
that's what they expect because that's always been that way.
Yeah. 20 years ago, when you were happy to see 7.
Oh yeah, that was that was
Right, you were
normal.
like,
I mean,
wow,
especially
7.
after going through the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, I was dealing with 16 to 18%.
Right.
But we still sold homes back then.
Yeah, and the difference was and people don't understand that is like at 16 or 18%, they can't fathom that. But if you have money in a checking account that's making, a savings account that's making 10, 11% interest, right? Your savings is actually making money.
Yep.
Right. And so people always ask that, well, how can you build houses in a market like that? Well, people that have savings, they're actually making a good return on their savings. And so that allows them to do that house at that
But you
point
also
in time.
have to remember too the mortgage industry, the lending industry stepped up and got very creative.
Yeah, real creative.
That's when there were the 6-3-1 buy downs and negative amortization loans and all that good stuff. So
Well, I also think like in the you talk about the 80s. I don't think we're going back in time, but 15-16% in the 80s on a new home price that was like $52,000.
Yeah.
well,
right.
that's,
Okay, today it sounds really low, but
Right.
you try 16% interest on a $330,000 store. No, now I don't even think
No.
those compare. So
No.
Yeah.
it was all so different
Yeah.
because everything costs so much less.
Right.
Yeah.
Interest rates could have been absorbed by that.
And
Yeah.
lot prices were in the 5 to 10,000.
Yeah,
range.
exactly.
Yeah, I can remember, when you cross that $100,000 mark, for a starter home, where it was like,
it's
oh,
like,
100,
whoa,
whoa,
that's like, ooh.
$100,000.
I know.
That was like will this work?
It's a
That was a
mansion.
major
Yeah,
commitment.
Yeah, everyone's like, was this work? I mean, I guess people will pay $100,000, but you know what? Everyone in the industry had that angst at that point, but no one blinked at 200.
Yeah.
Right, 200 just came and went, and it wasn't a news story. No one thought anything different of, a starter home crossing 200,000. It was just, it's 200 now.
That's where it is. It sounds
Right.
about right.
Sounds
And
about right.
That's really the gamble that we're looking at today is just what's going to happen with the rates. I mean, prices, I think right now, they're still going to keep rising
Yeah.
for the time being. So
Yeah. Yep. Well, guys, I think for this episode that'll probably wrap it up, because who knows, next episode we're probably at the pace of things going here. We may have to add to this topic.
Exactly.
next week. There may be something that changes in 7 days that we have to revisit this topic. So it's something that we'll just keep our finger on and just monitor as it changes, because I would say a month ago we didn't predict where we were right now. And at this point right now, I don't even feel comfortable in a month saying, well, I know all the answers in a month. So week by week, we just might kind of check back in on the topic and see where we're at.
Yeah.
All I know is the charts I look at for lumber and commodity pricing 2 months ago, the forecast chart was at a certain.
It's a
today,
funny looking chart on the forecast.
The forecast chart now has the top range getting up almost into $2,000.
Wow.
So that's not to say it'll get there, but the
Right.
range is there now. And
Right.
2 months ago, it was not even 1,400, which is where it's at today.
Right.
Yeah.
So who
Difference,
knows?
Big difference.
Yeah.
Just got to put our boots on and just get out there and
All right.
see what we can do
Life
with it.
goes on.
It does. Well, appreciate it. So
Thanks,
we'll catch
guys.
y'all next
Thanks,
week.
everybody.